You know, it was a small town by a small river and a small lake in a small northern part of a Midwest state. There wasn't so much wilderness around you couldn't see the town, but on the other hand, there wasn't so much town you couldn't see and feel and touch and smell the wilderness. The town was full of trees and dry grass and dead flowers now that autumn was here, and full of fences to walk on and sidewalks to skate on and a large ravine to tumble in and yell across. And the town was full of boys, and it was the afternoon of Halloween, and all the houses shut against a cool wind, and the town was full of cold sunlight. But suddenly the day was gone. Night came out from under each tree and spread. Well, that's Ray Bradbury from the Halloween Tree, and that's just to get you in the mood for this episode of Mysterious Goings On. Hi, it's me, Alex. Good to have you back. I am very excited to be joined by an eminence from my municipality, my area, my neck of the woods. I am joined today, our guest is going to be Mark Groves. Mark is the guy behind Magnificent Cowlick Media. He is an author. He is a podcaster. He's a lot of things. We're going to find out about him and about his work, and we're also going to talk a little bit about some fun Halloween subjects, particularly in the Kansas City area that I hail from. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mark Groves. Mark, welcome to Mysterious Goings On.
Well, thank you, Alex. Glad to be here. What a wonderful introduction with a kiss of Ray Bradbury in there. Who doesn't like that?
I hoped you would appreciate that. I'm so glad you did. I really love Ray. You know, it's when I was a kid reading The Halloween Tree and just all of his stuff, you know, there's just something, I could smell the leaves change when Ray wrote about Halloween.
It's so true about the cold sunlight. The fact that, you know, you've got all this sunshine and yet you're still wearing a jacket. And what a nice twist. In fact, Ray Bradbury, not plugging, just saying, the first book that I ever did along with several other writers, we based the kind of style of how the book, and it was a book / anthology, went along on Ray Bradbury's The Illustrated Man, one of my favorites.
Oh my
goodness.
Good
taste, you. Good taste.
Well, thank you. You know, I would like to thank the fact that I confess I've purchased your work but I just haven't got into it fully yet before our interview. I hate to say that because normally I'm the guy that most people at the guests go, "Oh my God, you actually read the book," but but I think I've got a good idea, and I want you to understand something, that I will read it and I will talk about it further. But I kind of felt like, you know, we met years ago, just to step back. We met years ago because I got called in for God knows why to fill in for a little local show when one of the hosts couldn't show up. I filled in for a whole 10 minutes. I remember telling, after meeting you, and you were the engineer and producing it, and I just said, why didn't you just have Mark sit down and do this?
I'm a bit of a chatty Cathy between the takes, aren't I?
Yeah, but you're good at it. My God, man, you're so good at it. So I was just like, okay, fine. But I remember that, and I filed that away, and then we didn't really keep up. But then I was talking to Mary McKenna, who listeners might recall is the first guest. Good old Mary, first guest of the season 4 of the show, and she kicked off the season and did a great job. And I was chatting with her, and I said, "Oh my gosh, you know, I'm taking a break, but when we get going again, I want somebody who can be fun for Halloween." And she said, "Well, what about Mark, you idiot?" And I went, "Oh my God, of course." Because that's how Mary talks to me. He's creepy and funny, and he's a better talker than anybody. Get him on here. And so here I am, and I was so thrilled. And you're a busy guy, and I don't want to like dox you or anything, but you're by day you're very involved in radio production, that kind of work. Is that about right?
That's absolutely right. Where I work, Intercom Broadcasting. We've got the 8-station cluster here in Kansas City. And as radio is evolving, and by evolving, it's tightening, becoming a smaller knit group of people that do a lot of stuff for everything across the country. We're now, the production department that I head up, we now do production for 9 radio markets across the nation. Well, mainly west and then heading east. So we do production for the Intercom stations here in Kansas City and St. Louis, Rochester, Madison, Milwaukee, blah, 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 blah.
Wow.
So we sell a lot of lawnmowers in the day.
and
about to get into leaf blowers.
Yeah, bound.
Conveniently located, by the way. Did you know that?
Well, Ray Bradbury, I don't know how he would have felt about leaf blowers because he wrote so wonderfully about the leaves changing. So let me ask you something. If, for people who just don't know, real quick, though, when they talk about what you do, production and those things, what does that exactly mean? Are you cutting spots? Are you producing shows? What are you doing?
At the group that I work with, we do all of that and are even working into starting to record podcasts, kind of, real podcasts versus just, replaying radio shows.
Right.
But we do all of it, from radio theater to the straight up, hey, Kansas City, do you like to save money on a new car type of spots? Do you need a screaming one? Do you need one soft spoken, etc.? The part that juices me about it, the ability, there's that thespian part of me that I never really nurtured because I kind of sucked on stage.
Oh. But
I could get behind a microphone and then have that confidence and just be whoever and be wherever. And then moons and moons ago, 20 odd years ago, I helped start Radio Disney at the ABC radio networks in Dallas. And that was so fun. That was all radio theater, all theater of the mind.
Oh, man.
And just, almost no holds barred. Just be as creative as you could, have fun with it, edutainment, all the way to just out there stuff. So good. And then that stained me. And I'm like, nope, I'll never go back to being a DJ again. This is where I belong. And it's where I've stayed for 35 years.
In Radio Disney, I didn't come to it till later, until it was in this market. I knew Bob Martin, who was a general manager of the local station, and some of the other folks there, but it was not the same thing. It was more about kind of the Pop-Tarts and playing their music and things like that. So when you were with Radio Disney, so you're saying it was more of a theater of the mind? There was storytelling going on?
We had the Magic Kids Theater started that, which was episodic. So you would start like a 6 to 10 minute, and if I wrote it, it was 13, and then my boss yelled at me and it became 8. Overwrite me? No, why? But we would start a story and then leave it with a cliffhanger and say, what happens next? And then kids could call in, and we would pick a phone call and then call 1-888 all ears or something like that. And we would pick one of the phone calls, then bam, on Monday, write a 6 to 8 minute episode based off the phone call, continue the story with a cliffhanger. What happens next? And kids got to participate. Wow. That was just one of so many things. One of my favorites was Gross Me Out, which was all about gross things in the world. I wrote one based upon myself and a friend of mine named Paul. I won't use his last name. It was down in Branson, Missouri, where I grew up. Paul and I were just the misfits of the neighborhood. I was fat and smart, and the Lord decided that all Paul needed was a heartbeat, because he didn't get really much of anything else at the time.
Oh,
this overbite that was just amazing. And then he even had the glasses that made his eyes seem like they were like bug eyes.
Oh my.
Okay. The character. Oh, what's his? I can't remember the name of the comedian from Dumb and Dumber. The thinner character with the bowl haircut.
Oh, Jim Carrey's character, right?
Yeah, Jim Carrey's character. That's what Paul looked like.
Oh, wow.
So the two of us, I switched the personalities and the bodies, because I was the big fat kid and he was super thin. And I switched our personalities, and we did a thing called I wrote a thing called Bud and Iggy, which allowed kids, it was a contest for kids to guess where we are. We would end up in places, and I would give out these really easy, stupid, softball clues. But I did both of the voices, and did so many of the episodes. Totally side note, but I loved doing that. One, because it was this memory of Paul and I walking around the neighborhood and imagining all the places we could be.
Right.
We would just talk and walk for 3 hours, just he and I, because we were there was no one else to hang with. And then and just imagine where we could be. So Paul and I got to more or less do it again as Bud and imagine the places where we could be all across the world, Paris, etc., driving around in our little VW Bug. We were 16, quote unquote, in the episodes. And from that on, anything we did stuff with American Girl, bringing some of their books to life. Got to talk to R.L. Stine, which was really cool. Super nice guy. And I mean, why wouldn't you be? He had all the money in the world.
Right.
But he was just super nice. And we were talking about adapting one of his books and approaching it, et cetera. That didn't end up going through, but it was 3 years of some of the most creative radio that I ever did. And then I, after moving on from there, had, stayed in the production commercial side, but I've always had that tendency to go for the theater aspect of it. There's so much you can do with audio. You can play with it. You can move it around. You can do things with a listener. And sometimes radio, in its rush to get advertisements on the air, and also, especially after 2008 when the bottom dropped out of the economy.
Right.
And suddenly, we've got to get, every time this commercial plays, we need 10 sales. It changed the dynamics of the approach to commercials. And that's when you started really, every stop set was just selling. And it's kind of gotten back to it a little bit now, where a stop set, a commercials, all the commercials played in a row, where some of them can capture you again. Right. And speak to you instead of at you. And that's the part of it I love.
Well, it's evident in your passion. And, it's interesting to me. It's kind of similar to in the way with writing for the internet and things like that. For the longest time, it was like, okay, if you're going to write stuff that's going to get picked up by the search engines, you've got to repeat yourself this many times. You've got to repeat the same phrase, right? You got to do this little formula, and it's got to be this, and this, and blah, blah, blah. And the whole idea of storytelling was thrown out the freaking window. And then I was never so happier than a few years ago, and it was like, Google has decided the algorithm is bullshit, and we're going to just let people tell stories. And if you're authentic and you're writing as a real human being, you're gonna, guess what? You're gonna succeed. And that's what's real. And that's what I'm hearing from what you're saying now, is maybe radio is kind of going back to, hey, yeah, I understand stop sets, we got to do this, this, and this, but maybe the listeners will listen more if we tell them better stories.
Amen. And that's what I'm hoping for now. That's all hopes and dreams. There are days, I call some days are diamonds, some days are dust, because some days you're like, I have been touched by the hands of God. Look at what I've created. Listen to his glory. And other days you're just slapping hubcaps onto audio. Just next. And
oh Lord, yeah. That's like podcasting. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because it's the big content. There's this big maw of content you have to fill. Like, I've been off for a few weeks. I took a little break in between. This has been the most successful season we've ever done. But nice. But I just run out of. It's like I'm not just going to get on there and monologue. I mean, I want good guests, and if I'm going to monologue, it's got to be about something that's worthwhile. So I've just finally embraced the idea of like TV, or like a lot of things. You have hiatuses and you have breaks, and you don't have to go, every day. I want to ask you that real quick before we get into some other things. Because see, I knew this would happen when I had you on. We would start talking about everything. You're probably going to have to come back if I don't wear you out. But here's the thing.
It's all good.
So for a podcast though, and you've podcasted, and I've come around to the idea that I am not like a weekly news magazine. I am more about creating good content with good interviews. It's saying something that's meaningful. And if that means I'm not on 52 weeks a year, but I'm on, let's say, 32 weeks a year or 42 weeks a year, that's good enough, because what I do bring is good. Some people say, you're crazy, you're going to lose audience. And I probably will, up and down with that. I have to kind of regain some audience that way. But I just feel like if you're good and you get them subscribing, when you come back, they'll still be there. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think content is king. Mm-hmm. You can have people that come in and they can just talk. Hey, look, we did an hour. We're done. Good. And people, I think the audiences these days can sniff out most of the inauthenticity of conversation. You can tell when people are stretching, and I think they would much rather be get to enjoy something that, one, obviously the host is into, and then two, that's interesting to them. And since getting podcasts is you click on some, is it to you whenever there's a new one? Mm-hmm. I mean, my God, how easy is that?
Right.
That's not brain surgery. You're not having to go and go, oh my God, is my next, they didn't give me one this week. Nobody cares. I mean, there's 50 other podcasts that they've got in their list at the same time. So they're not going to stop listening to podcasts, and yours will pop in. It's not like, destination TV.
Right.
At least in my humble opinion.
I agree.
And,
yeah.
they with the large amount, as long as more are coming, if you're going to go a year, yeah, you're probably going to lose them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's good to know, because I'm just deciding on I'm just getting more and more, because I did that for a while. When we first started, I was really excited, had a good head of steam. Apple gave us, a new and noteworthy designation. It was really nice. And I did great in the first year and a half. It was great. But then after a while, I was just burning out, and I realized I am putting a lot of self-indulgent crap on here, and maybe that's not so good. And my downloads were showing it. So anyway, so it's good. That's why it's circling back. That's why it's great for my listeners. Hi, listeners. We're still here. But that's why it's so great to have a great guest like you. So let's talk a little bit beyond your work then. Let's talk a little bit about the writing side of it. So, folks, just so you know, and I need to ask you more about this, but I'll just kind of go from your bio for a second here, though. So besides the fact that you've written thousands of commercials and promo pieces and radio theater scripts, as we've touched on, but you also write plays and short stories, novels, songs, and poetry. You edit stories and you do all these things. It's all part of Magnificent Cowlick Media. And you've got several titles under that. Tell us a little bit about Magnificent Cowlick, besides the fact that I also, by the way, have a Magnificent Cowlick. So I'm I'm thrilled to meet a fellow cowlicker. So please go on. What is this all about?
Well, the Magnificent Cowlick Media, every chubby, hairy production guy in radio has his own, little side company inside, and I do freelance work and voiceover and this and that. And I had several different names for it. It started as Audio Inc., ODDIO, comma INK. Oh, that's cutesy. Nobody knows what the heck it is. And I'm like, they didn't get it because I'm talking. It's not stupid. So what do I do? But I come up with a company name that's even longer and a pain in the ass to type. But as I was looking at all these different things, I didn't want it to sound normal, because I'm not. And I wanted to at least reflect part of me, so that anybody approaching me for whether I'm writing a commercial for them or doing this, especially my freelance gigs, I wanted them to know that I come at it from the creative angle and from a slightly different angle, not your corporate, media communications. And I have this picture of me when I was 4 years old, and my mom, I was just, oh God, you look at this picture and you're like, you are the most rotten little S in the world. What is wrong with this kid? Because I'm just scowling at the camera. I've got this kind of Dean Martin into, his eighth martini kind of look on my face. And the story from my mom, I'd been, throwing a fit and crying because, as God was my witness, I was not going to have my picture taken. And I've got this little yellow shirt with a little sailboat on the breast and a little black bow tie. And my mom did my hair in this kind of 50s little grease back, do. And she butch waxed on the back of my head, sticking straight up. It's pointing right at the sky with pride and honor. And I saw that, and I'm like, the top of this head has to be my logo. And my wife and I fought. She's a fantastic graphic designer, and I was like, I need more cowlick. She's like, no. And I'm, no, baby, I need more cowlick. Oh, Mark, please. No, honey, more cowlick. And so we fought back and forth, and this curly, whacked out cowlick. I'm like, that's it, golden. She's like, oh my God. So we found our middle ground, and that became Magnificent Cowlick Media. And then I work with various clients, and they changed throughout the years. This wonderful client I had out of San Angelo, Texas. If you have been driving into Sonic drive-ins for the past 20 years.
Oh, dude, I'm from Oklahoma City.
That's ground zero for Sonic.
Yep.
Sonic Radio was done by this company called Studio Stream in San Angelo, and just a fantastic group of people with this crazy idea, and they made it happen. And so I've been selling people toaster sandwiches and orders of tots and jumbo popcorn chicken for roughly 20 years. And now the company itself has been bought out and is being dissolved, which just breaks my heart. This is the last month that you'll be able to hear me when you go in. I did not know this going in. You're the voice of Sonic Radio? I do imaging for it. Yeah, I have.
Oh my
for
God.
20 some odd years. So
oh my God.
I probably sold you a brand new Chakamoto sundae or whatever their latest delicious creation was.
More than I should admit to. Oh my God.
But the Magnificent Cowlick Media, I've been doing that. And then back in 2012, I've been part of a writers group here in Kansas City called the Dead Horse Society. And even it's gone through its own permutations, and it got super huge, and it's such a blah, blah, blah. But with this group of writers, one of the things about writers is that they're always working on something.
Yep.
It's not so often they're finishing something, doing it, working on it. And we were getting to that point, and I finally we said, my God, we've got all these people here, and we approach horror and sci-fi and this and that. It was a speculative fiction group, so it's all about, fantasy, sci-fi, and horror. And I was like, well, let's do this. Let's come up with some ideas. And we were bandying about ideas for an anthology. And I was like, I work at, Entercom, 98.9 The Rock does Rock Fest almost every year. This past year they didn't, but they did it for, 20, 25 years, 27 years, something like that.
Right.
And I hadn't been to it. I've worked at Entercom here in Kansas City for 18 years now. And the first 9 years I never went. And people are like, what's wrong with you? You've got to go to Rockfest. I'm like, well, the music's cool, but it's really kind of not my gig and blah, blah, blah. And finally I was like, oh, okay, free beer, food, music. Okay. Because I work there. So I get to get in the VIP tent. Winner. Right. I finally went, and it was the coolest thing ever. We're standing on this little stage watching that's pretty far away from the main stage, but it's got a great view. It's uplifted. And I'm looking at, there was a gentleman in tan pants, khaki pants, and he had a blue blazer on and a white shirt, with the starch collar, etc., and short hair, and he's holding this beer. And there's a guy next to him with multicolored hair and a ripped up T-shirt and enough metal in his face to build a Yugo, are doing that kind of head bob. They're just rocking hard together to the band that was on the stage, and they are from such different worlds, but this rock concert brought them together and made them kind of brothers in what was going on. And I'm like, this is cool. And it went ding. Wait a minute. We've got all these different writers who do everything differently. But what if they wrote about people going to a rock concert? Oh, yeah. And the things that happen to them. And I wanted all the stories to come out of the Midwest, because the Midwest deserves some attention. There's even, Midwestern Noir, Ozark Noir.
There used to be Midwest Gothic, I think, too.
Yeah. So with all of that in mind, I set this out in front of the group and said, okay, here are 14 just popped into my head, and here's how it would work. And then I would write like kind of an interstitial connective tissue, much akin to what we mentioned earlier, Ray Bradbury's The Illustrated Man, where it's the tattoos and that campfire that connect each of the stories and makes it move along. And we all went, okay, bam, let's do this. And then it went a little nuts, but it was a grassroots effort. And I set the concert in Theodosia, Missouri, Isabella, Missouri, actually. My mom owns 24 acres down there, by the way. That's how I knew about the area intimately. So we set it all up, got it all writing. 7 different writers wrote stories about people going to the concert and the blood and the blah that happens to them. I was writing the interstitial stuff, and I was doing it in my garage over a summer. And honest to God, I don't know where that story came pouring out of. It was just supposed to be 10,000 words. 65,000 words later. Whoa. Like, so it's a novel with an anthology in chapter 5. And it's one of the few things that I've written that my wife actually enjoyed. She doesn't do horror. She does great graphic design, very clean, and she can flow a book like nobody's tomorrow. And when she reads your work, she's really great about pointing out what's wrong with it. Which, at those times when you just really want somebody to cheer for you, it's a little hard. But most of the time it's like, okay, that makes great sense. Thank you. Right. She's very smart. Oh, man. And with all of us working this thing together, she enjoyed the novel, which shocked me. And I was like, wow, even with all and she's like, the people, it's funny because it's rock and roll. Right. And then you hit the anthology itself in chapter 5, And those are pretty straight up horror stories. Even the second short story in the anthology that I wrote, they're all straight up horror. But then you've got the crazy stuff going on in between, and then we wrap it up in chapter 6 and find out if Hell on Earth starts in Theodosia, Missouri. So that's there is so much that I learned from that, because when you don't know that you can't do something, it's really easy to do it.
Right.
And we stepped into it with 3 editors and 7 different authors. Don't ever share editing again for a specific idea. You really need somebody to hang on to the rudder hard. But that was a learning thing. And also, for the love of God, hire a proofreader.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
We did a grassroots proofreading, and so I learned about that. The stories are great. I love the book. It's a bit of a hot mess, but I absolutely love that book.
And this is Hellzapalooza, the best
the best damned rock show ever.
Okay, and I think that's the one I picked up, and for my Kindle, and I will be reading that this October. I pick 3 or 4 books to read every October, and of course every night I watch a horror movie in October. That's what I do.
Nice.
Oh man, I'm bleary-eyed. It's like my wife and 11-year-old daughter are like, okay, we know what you're doing. Good night. And I'll be up until 2 or whatever. And yeah, I pay for it later, but it's worth it. It's back to child. So I understand that too. And all the writers listening to this show, because this show's foundation as writers will all understand about the proofreading. And even if you hire one good proofreader with their hand on the rudder, things still slip through, and it's awful. It can be it's cringe. Sure. It's cringeworthy for you, the writers. But you know what's really sweet is that 9 times out of 10, if the story's good, people really don't care and they don't notice, and it's just you move right on. And so I'm looking forward to this. And so you did that, and you went on from that, and you've done a couple other things though, right? Under this the aegis of Magnificent Cowlick, correct?
Oh sure. There was that book. Did 4 more books, 4 more anthologies. There was Black Buttons, Volume 1, 2, and 3, and the third one was a little more strongly themed with family elements strongly up front, and I kind of expanded things. It's hard to be this old and realize how stupid you can be. I swear to God, I'm so geocentric about the Midwest. To me, the Midwest was Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, some of Arkansas until you get really to the southern part, and then that's just the South. And that was pretty much it to me. And then somebody pointed out, to my chagrin, that it goes all the way up to Canada, you moron. I'm like, oh my God, what? No, you're lying. And then I looked it up, and I even refused to believe Wikipedia. I looked it up on other sites. I was like, oh shit, I have, wow. So, like in the third Black, all of that, the point of that being that the third Black Buttons book, I opened up, the stories all happen in the Midwest.
Right.
And that one I opened up to the full Midwest. And I even opened up the authors, because originally it was just Midwestern authors and really Kansas City centric. Mm-hmm. And then I realized the stories are about the Midwest. Let's not worry about where the authors are from. And in Black Buttons Volume 3, there's a wonderful story by a Canadian author that involves Minnesota, and just beautiful and dark and delicious. Well, and so that book, and then the only one that's just me is Black Buttons Volume 2, which is a collection of my short stories, all set in the Midwest. Has one of the favorite ones that I've ever written. That's about a high school prom and and a blind date that's vengeful. So,
all right, that's on my list too. You know, my friend, our listeners will love that. We have some Canadian listeners. In fact, one of our frequent guests, our returning champion guest, is the Canadian. He's a Saskatchewan-based Canadian author, Jason McIntyre, who's horror, thriller, and dark stuff. Oh my God, he'd be great for one of your anthologies. So it'll be thrilling for fans of Jason's who listen to this show. To come check out these Black Buttons, because so check out the southern part of the Midwest a little bit here if you're a McIntyre fan, and just see what Mark and company have in store for you there.
Bye. Tell them to get a hold of me. I'll send them a PDF.
Oh, very nice. We'll do.
Hey, I'll send it to Arthur.
It's got to work it out, right? I
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
what I'm saying.
So let me ask you something about your because I want to get to Halloween a little bit and I want to talk to you about that. But
Yes.
so how would you? And I'm so sorry I haven't read everything yet, but I will. But how would you kind of rank your fiction? Is it more towards is it more supernatural horror fiction? Is it more the visceral kind of guts and gore? Is it a little between? Is it more gothic? Where would you rate it?
The stuff that I write is actually, oh God, it is technically horror. If you were going to go look in Barnes and Noble, you would find it in the horror section.
Right.
However, it ranges from just kind of dark with a dark twist fiction all the way up to there's one or two where, you know, hey, it's a tent, intestines go awry and blah blah blah. And you've got intestines, you've got it, we've all got intestines. But most of them, I try to make them character driven rather than straight up horror driven. I'm not that great at that, at the straight up horror. I have this tendency to throw in a comedic twist, and I don't know what it is about me, but it just happens. In some of the anthologies, there's an author, and she just got married. Shelby Dollar is her name, and she's a wonderful person, a great human being, and just adorable. You see these pictures, and you're like, that is the nicest person. And she writes the most, oh my God, body horror that you ever, where did that come from? And it's wonderful because you just really don't expect it. And then you find out you made this, and then you sit and joke and laugh with her, drink 2 beers, and you're like, okay, now I get it.
Oh, well, body horror, Jason's fans will know this. I've talked to him about this. He's written some body horror. I'm just, I mean, I love the movie The Fly, the remake with Jeff Goldblum, but boy, towards the end, man, stuff where you're losing control of even your own body and it's being taken over. I have a real tough time with stuff like that. But I don't get me wrong, I love it, but I'm like getting like cramps and Charlie horses in all my muscles from kind of, you know, recoiling permanently while I read it. I like that there's a full gamut. The full gamut.
You can find stuff to laugh at and then find stuff to go, oh my God. And even one of the other authors, J.E. Peterson, he's real good about setting up the kind of spooky atmospheric stuff. Ooh. So with all these different abilities. And it's a pleasure, and honest to God, that they allowed me to edit them was just a pleasure. I learned so much as I went through. You know, I just feel kind of lucky that I got to work with all these people.
Was there anything on the horizon? Anything coming up?
There always is. You just never know. Well, for example, the podcast that I was doing with Shelby Dollar and J.E. Peterson was called Pottenstein's Lab. Yes. And it was just us getting together and going over the weird things that we like, because we all like kind of spooky, odd stuff. And I think you and I might have talked about this off show, the fact that I've pulled back on Pottenstein's Lab and we're retooling because podcasts are now, they're on the radar.
Yeah.
They're straight up there. The company that I work for bought a company that does podcasts and then bought another one, and are now really, really focusing on it. And with the money and the influx comes the tightening. You know, just like first started, and it was willy-nilly, and you could listen to anything coming out of any country, anywhere. But then it became money oriented, and it, quite honestly, as it should have. I mean, they were playing people's stuff without the rights to.
Right.
But then it all tightened up, and it's the same thing with podcasting. So when the lawsuits started happening about plagiarism.
Oh yeah.
And I realized we talked about cool stuff that was listed on websites and just chatted about and laughed and then drank beer and then laughed too much, and we didn't list our sources.
Right.
And that's no. In today's world, no. That you shouldn't do that.
They'll come after you.
Yeah, you know, they're right. We shouldn't. Yeah. So pulled back on that. We're going to retool, and that whole long spiel is to lead me to answer your question. What's on the horizon? We're going to retool Pottenstein's Lab, but we're going to use it to talk about the writing process. And what we've decided to do, we just have to sit down and finally map it out a little bit. we're going to bring the audience along with us as we create an anthology. From the very beginning, where you sit down and you hash out ideas, to next step is writing. How are we going to edit? Let's talk about the editing process. Let's talk about what it's like to be edited, and go through each and every step as we do a real anthology. And hopefully the episodes will be 20 to 30 minutes. Nothing too thick, too heavy.
Right.
We walk through and we make it real. It's not, we're not going to go, okay, let's do this and kind of fake it and already have an idea.
Right.
We know we're going to do an anthology. We don't know what it's about yet. Well, it'll be in the horror category, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But we don't know how we're going to theme it quite yet, and we're going to hash that out and basically, show our moles and our scars and our warts all in it, and take people along. And it's really kind of a podcast for writers, and especially ones who are kind of starting out, because from doing Hellsapalooza and all expensive things I learned, I fronted all the money for the book.
Oh.
And it was a chunk of change, and it was mostly my fault. So, well, mostly, listen to me, Hedge. It was all my fault. It wouldn't have cost that much if I hadn't pulled the trigger too soon to hit a deadline. Really could have used a little more proofreading. Okay. Oh my God. I'm so dancing around that because it's horribly embarrassing. The first time we printed the book, we were trying to get it out before a convention, a book convention.
Mm-hmm.
So I pulled the trigger. I said, "Yep, let's print it. Go, let's do it." And we printed it and had to do it at 48-hour books, which was like $14 a book.
Oh wow.
Which and
Whoa.
That was a learning thing. And I figured, well, if we could sell it at 17, and then I opened the first page in that 125 books I got, and from reading through, it's like, oh my God, what version of this went? Oh my God, characters' names changed, and this and that, and I'm like, oh shit, I have $1,500 here worth of crap.
Oh man.
And what do I do with this? And we've got this thing coming up, and I printed it for this, and it arrived like the day of the event. So really quickly, my wife, being the wonderful graphic designer she is, I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, let's call it the Shock and Flaw edition. And we made up a 100 nameplates, and everybody signed them. All the authors were there, so everybody signed it. And there were these stickers you could put into it that was all signed by the authors that said Shock and Flaw. And we said basically, and I took a hit on the price. We sold them for like $10 each, and said, look, if you buy this book, you can have this. It's a limited edition Shock and Flaw, and this version of this book will never, ever be printed again. And it is full of screw-ups, so please don't read it. But give me your email address, and I'll send you a free either PDF or one of the readers, a Mobi file of the book in the edited, cleaned up edition. And we sold them all.
Brilliant. Oh my God, you sold them all?
People are really, really kind, especially when you just approach them honestly. And I think again, like I said, I think it's a great book, and I'm not trying to sell it. I just
that's why you're here. You should. Well, that's not why, but it's. I want you to. Don't feel like you can't. Listen. I got to tell you real quick. My first book. I indie myself. I had an editor who didn't do a great job. I went to my listeners are going, oh God, I've heard this story, but I'll just tell you real quick. I got asked to like a book club, and there's all these lovely ladies who are drinking wine, and they read the book, and like one of them was really angry. She goes, "There are 3 typos in this book." I went, 3 typos. And Three? Yeah.
Oh my God. She'd be 4 foot in the grave if she read this. That Shock and Flaw would have killed this poor woman.
Yeah. But I was so mortified, just like you are. I know I could sense it. You know what I did? So I hired a different editor, and I did a revised vision. And so what I did after that, like you did, you got to make hay, right? So I just said, who wants this limited edition, rare, first edition? There's some mistakes in it. I'll autograph it for you. I sold most of them. I've got 1 or 2 left. But my difference is I got in where I didn't lay in like a huge amount for a big like a book fair or show. I had a stock of them, but not huge. And nowadays, of course, with POD with Amazon, you just you just it's just as they're ordered. So I don't even worry about that unless I'm going to a book signing or something like that. And I don't know about you, but I'm kind of done with book signings. They wear me out. But anyway,
I hit that. That was in 2012 that came out, and 2016 was the last year that I was hitting everything, going just, oh my God. And I know it's only 4 years, but it was 4 years of planning your weekends and every extra dime I made with Magnificent Cowlick Media to go into buying the tables at the events and selling the books and planning all my vacation time around that. And I loved the books, it was so cool meeting all these people and doing all these kind of insider things. But it just, you go to these cool events and you're in the background, you're selling, you're not there to be at the event.
Right.
And I'm like, I would have never actually gone to this if I hadn't been selling, and I want to go to this, and damn, I can't.
Right.
I'm behind the table. And one of the about selling, because I've gone to Crypticon and Planet Comic-Con. I've gone out of state to some cons and this and that. One of the places that I sold the most books, weirdly enough, just out of blue, I can't remember the name of the book series. There were like 3 of them, and it was about dragons and stuff. It was some kid that wrote it when he was 16, and his mom and dad thought so much of the book, they hired a proofreader and editor to kind of help with it. And then they took about a year sabbatical, and they and their kid went around and just did their best to sell that book at every fair, every this, every that. They just weekend after weekend. And it ended up being bought and turned into a movie, and the kid made millions of dollars, and it was pretty awesome.
Oh.
And I thought, well, maybe I'll try one of these little fairs. And there's a place called the Sugar Mound Arts and Crafts Festival. This year being 2019, it will be, I believe, October 12th and 13th. I won't be there as a seller, but it's in Mound City, Kansas, and is this little fair that I went in there, I set up my table, and I've got this banner that has skulls and books, and it says dark fiction from 6 feet under the Midwest.
Right.
Little table, my little skulls and displays, and I got my books piled up, and I did a fair in Excelsior Springs, and I had like 5 people ask me if I worship Satan. It was the most bizarre experience. I'm not kidding. It was really weird. Down in Mound City, I'm stuck between this lady that's about 200 years old that's doing these personalized Christmas ornaments. And on my other side is an older, obviously Kansas couple, apparently just got off the tractor and came to the Mound City Fair, and they welded together these copper, nails and this and that into windmills and crosses and horse heads and stuff.
Huh.
And across the way is a Sensi lady. And here I am, with Satan and death and skulls in between all these really sweet people. I sold every book I had but one.
Are you kidding?
I sold out, and I went down there. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to sell much. I'll just give it a shot. It was very cost effective. And so I brought a stack of 10 of this, and I had 11 of that, and and I sold everything but one book. And so every year until this year, I've gone down there and sold and bought my, goat soap and the occasional.
What was it again? What was it called again? I've seen the picture on your website. What was it called again?
Sugar Mound Arts and Crafts Festival.
Sugar Mound. My goodness, because I'm trying to identify once a year where I can take my series. I've got a 7-book series, and it's mystery, thriller, and all that, and maybe just go and do what you did. I'm looking at your picture. This is great. Look at you. This is great. If it's okay, I'm going to use this picture in the show notes if it's all right with you.
Yeah, just to kind of stretch it, make me look thin.
Dude, if I can't,
not that much Photoshop in the world.
If I can't do it for me, I don't know if I can do it for you. But so that's fascinating. And so all the writers and fans of writers who listen to this show, they love this kind of story about the kind of, I call the guerrilla warfare of trying to sell books. And I don't know. I have not done one of these. I've done a lot of actual like bookstores, 3 or 4 different cities. And I've sold a few books, but mostly I just kind of sat there and felt really, really humble. And I just, And I'm a PR guy by profession, so I could not drum up anything. And I just got to a point where I'm just like, I don't want to do this anymore. Because I had people who would just kind of walk up to me and ask me, where to find the James Patterson, for God's sake. And I'm like,
oh my God, really?
I'm doing a signing for my books. I don't know where James Patterson is. Well, what good are you? One lady said to me. So
good Lord. You should have pointed him to the self-help book. Patterson's over there between how to not be a jerk and I need to learn better personal skills.
Yeah, right up with the book club lady who apparently was just having a really bad day and took it out on me. But wine will do that. So this is great. I can already tell I'm going to have you back because we're going to have to talk about this. But I would be remiss at this time of year if we didn't talk a little bit about haunted Kansas City area. Are there some interesting things that you know about, or that your travels have you've run across that are related to Halloween and this area of the world?
Absolutely. One I would recommend. There's a wonderful lady out of Topeka who wrote a book about 20. You and I talked about this also before the show. She wrote a book, I think it was 22 years ago, that is still being referenced today in various podcasts, etc. It's called Haunted Kansas.
Yes. Ghost
Stories and Other Eerie Tales by Lisa Hefner Heights. And I highly recommend it because Lisa does a great job. It's not one of those books where they're trying to spook you and telling these kind of BS stories. She pretty much tells the stories as they were told to her, and adds in some factual stuff about the areas, etc. It's really cool, and definitely get that. She does touch on like the Stull Cemetery, which is that's not one of my. It's spooky, sure, but cemeteries are spooky by nature, and those kind of I'm not that into those. Belvoir Winery and Inn is a wonderful place with a very odd vibe. Some beautiful parts of it. People have weddings out there, etc. But then you get into some of the other parts, especially when it was, I think, was it Internet IOOF, the Oddfellows? Right. It was a home, and they still have one of those glass coffins from the IOOF gathering that's got us. And it has really, really odd vibes, and is a very cool place to go. The Warnell House Museum.
Oh yeah,
is also haunted. And is a pretty cool place to stop by and check out. St. Joe, the Glore Psychiatric Museum, which by the time that this airs, they may or may not have. They probably will already have had their Spend the Night at the Glore Museum. And we did that as Poddenstein's Lab and recorded a podcast in the room where they have a little morgue, and then next to it is the autopsy room. Yeah. So we recorded our podcast at the autopsy room and then slept there that night. And it's such a fun experience, especially I think it was Apex is the name of the ghost hunting / investigation group that came down. There's an Apex group here in Kansas City, Paranormal Investigations, and also one out of Iowa. And they conducted the investigation, did a great job. And it just, the overall vibe of it was wonderful. And then there were people who, of course, said that they had experiences. And you when you sit down and you talk about what was experienced, that's pretty cool. And to know that this place was actually an insane asylum, as they used to be called, is just it's a learning experience. And also the overnight thing is just a cool experience if you're into dark tourism. You can, let's see, that was Glore with its amazing and weird history. If you go up north, Plattsburgh, Missouri is wonderful. I love that place. We almost bought a house there when we moved here back 18 years ago. It was a hard choice. The place. Okay, I'll tell the story. It was
please.
I think it's a gingerbread. It's the one that's painted every color under the sun with the little wheels and things on the outside of the house. The most god-awful thing you could ever do to somebody who has to repaint that house. And it was built in 1889. Wonderful house. Had been empty for like 2.5 years. My wife and I went there to look at it because I love old houses. And I'm like, oh my God, this is in our price range. Look here, this central air is crap, and it's got radiators. So what? Oh my God. And my wife her eyeballs were trying to crawl out of her head because they had redone the house in all the original colors of the era. So you've got every wallpaper under the sun with multiple designs. You've got designs going across the ceiling, and every room is different. Even those wonderful sliding pocket doors, you open it up and you're like, oh, my head, my brain. And there's no way she could have lived in it. But we went upstairs, 3 bedrooms upstairs, and there was this middle room, and I don't know, you could call me an atheist who's afraid of the dark, or because there's all this stuff that I'm like, it could be. I'm very agnostic. I'm actually not an atheist, but I'm very agnostic about it. But I do get, goosebumps and this and that. We go up into the upper bedrooms. The middle one, I kind of broke out in goose flesh, and I swear to you by all holy, I was like, there's a presence here, and it's a woman. And she's lonely.
Oh.
Empty, and I was probably just picking up some, artisty vibe about, the poor lonely house with its empty eyes looking upon the street. No, it just this room was, I felt this. And so we walked around it, talked with the realtor for a bit, and then she and I, my wife and I left. And as we were driving, I'm wondering, and I said, hey, sweetie, what'd you think? And she's like, oh my God, that wallpaper, it's gonna kill me. And we talked a bit in the kitchen. It's 2 inches tall. It's horrible. And I said, what'd you think about that? The upstairs, especially that middle room that looked out over the street. And she said, oh, the haunted room. And then bam, goosebumps. I'm like, you felt something? And she's like, oh yeah, it's a woman. I'm like, what?
No way.
And she's like, yeah, she's not mean or anything, but she wants people to live there. And I'm like, oh my God, that is exactly what I felt. So I did end up going up there several years later and talked to the people who bought the house, and they were, I don't even remember what they did, but very, very nice people. And I asked them about, did they ever feel any present? Nothing. Maybe it was just happy and didn't need to be present anymore. But there's a house around the corner called the Pink Rosebud Bed and Breakfast. I hope it's still functioning. 2 years ago, a friend of mine and I stayed there. This is, again, Plattsburgh. And he was helping me sell books at a motorcycle rally. That was such a hot, sweaty fail. But it was horrible. Very nice people. It was just horrible. So we decided not to go back the next day because these intense thunderstorms were moving in, and there's no way my tent thing would have survived there. So we packed it all up in my truck. We went back to the Pink Rosebud Bed and Breakfast, and he and I have been friends since we were 18. And we sat and we're drinking, Rieger's whiskey downstairs in the little thing, and nobody else was there but us. And I'm like, okay, this big, huge, 5,000, 6,000 square foot house, and it's just us, this edifice. Let's do this. So, I was trying to raise spirits. Spirit, are you there? Blah, blah, blah. And he doesn't believe any of that crap, and it's just giving me so much trouble. We finally went up to one of the upstairs bedrooms, and there's like 6 of them, and they're all, and I'm getting kind of some GBs, but we started taking pictures, and nothing was coming out. It was too dark, and he took his camera, set it for like 10 seconds, and it was just black. 20 seconds, there was a little bit of a light blob, and we're looking into this bedroom where we're taking these shots, and there's just the light from the street on the bed and the bedposts and the bedspread. And he sets his camera for 30-second exposure. Mm-hmm. Lets it set, and you can kind of see there's something there, and we're like, this sucks. let's go get some rest. So we did. Well, about a week later, he emails me and he says, Mark, I don't believe in this crap, and I'm not saying it is, and I'm not saying it isn't, but take a look at this. And in the picture of the bedspread, etc., he's like, I didn't touch this up at all. And he's like, see what you think. And I'm looking at this, and look, there's a face.
Oh my!
Right there. And supposedly the place is haunted by a little girl, a woman. There's an older man and 2 cats. And now I actually interviewed the previous owner, John Sr., about the ghosts that were in there. And then John passed away. His son says that his father is there.
Oh wow!
In the house. And that occasionally they'll smell cigarette smoke out of nowhere. And John Sr., well, that was part of his demise.
Sure.
Was his chain smoking, and they still catch him there. So I'm like, oh, this is cool. All of this stuff it's all over Kansas, Missouri. One of the funnest things is just scratching the surface. If you go to places, go to these small towns, you can't be too blunt about it. Like, hey, do you know any ghosts and spooky things? But if you talk to folks and just treat it respectfully, and you know, I did that down in Ottawa, Kansas.
Yeah.
Went there, and as a matter of fact, funny thing, it was the same bud of mine. He's so used to me being an idiot, he can handle it. We were at an antique store, and I was talking to them about this and that, and about, you know, haunted blah, blah, blah. And they said, well, actually, we heard the municipal auditorium's haunted. Really? Yeah, there's laid down to the, what was it, the train state, the depot museum. And she might know something about it. And I'm like, we are on this. Like, oh, I'm in. So we went down, and eventually the story came out. Honest to God, I'll shut up. The municipal auditorium in Ottawa is haunted. And what had happened was a gentleman right after World War I. Oh, I've blanked on his name. And he's buried in the cemetery, the big cemetery in Ottawa. He came back, and he was damaged from the war, right, and was not dealing with it well. And that the following fall, after the end of World War I, they built the municipal auditorium kind of in honor of the World War I vets, the ones who came home and the ones we lost.
Right.
And he snuck in because at that time the place wasn't heated. So in the winter, they just shut it down. He broke in, went up into, there's a room underneath the upper seating level, and hung himself in the rafters there.
Oh my.
Now, nobody knew where he'd gone. Nobody knew. They figured he'd just blown town. And that next spring, they're opening it all back up, etc. And they start having shows there. And they start noticing in the, I'm sorry, this is kind of gross. They start noticing in the concession stand, there's just this odor, je ne sais quoi, that just drifts every once in a while. And finally, somebody went up above that and happened to go into the space under the seating upstairs, the balcony seats, and they found what was left of him. And so they interred him. Now, the twist of that story, you're like, oh, okay, that did happen. That's a verifiable fact of history that this guy did this here. But what makes it quite so spooky? Well, the lady that was at this depot, I talked to her, and she had worked there as a 20-something back in the very early 70s. And she worked there at nights doing bookkeeping for them. And she said all the time the place was locked down, every door was locked, but she would hear footsteps. She would hear people going up and down the stairs, and no one was there. She would hear doors slam. And then they had a performance there by the Amazing Kreskin.
Kreskin?
So speaking of Canada, hello, Canada. He's up in Canada still doing his thing. And the Amazing Kreskin did a performance there. And at the end of his performance, one of his stopper, he had somebody who worked for the place where he did his show. They would hide his check somewhere in the auditorium. And through his amazing powers of mindfulness, he would find it, and that's how he got paid. Well, she got pegged with hiding the check in the auditorium, right?
Uh-huh.
Problem was she was young, and when they said auditorium, what's the name of the place? It's the Ottawa Municipal Auditorium. She didn't think about it needed to be out in the audience where they'd get to watch it. She took that and slid it under the door of that upstairs balcony room. She's like, okay, bring it. Be Amazing Kreskin. And so they got to the end of the show. He lines up all the workers as kind of a thank you. They're on the stage with him. And he's like, okay, through my prognosticating, blah, blah, blah. And he's kind of thinking. And then he goes down in the audience. And then he walks out of the audience. And it's several minutes. And so people are starting to talk. They're getting bored. They're looking around. He comes back down, and he's got the paycheck and the envelope. And he harangues them in front of them. He's like, this is the biggest thing, and you hit it in a blah, blah, blah. I can't, stupid to do this, yada, yada. He was just furious. And one of his last statements before he walked off was, you hit it in that room up under the balcony. Nobody got to see it, and I don't know why you have all of those coffins in there, but you are weird people, and I will never be back. And off he went.
Oh my God.
There were no coffins in that room. And I actually I interviewed him about that.
No way.
I chatted with him. Now, you got to remember that the Amazing Kreskin has been amazing for a lot of years.
Uh-huh.
And being amazing is his game and how he's made a living. So, of course, he remembered it. Yeah, Ottawa, Kansas. You bet. But he did. It was interesting talking to him about, the psychic impressions and the feelings that are left, et cetera, et cetera. And so putting it all together, these stories, these little pieces are all around us.
Oh, man.
So you've got the big chunks. You can talk to people about the various places that claim to be haunted, and every bed and breakfast is haunted,
right?
As long as you're a paying guest. So
well,
every single one.
Well, speaking of that, really quickly, I was going to tell you. So I years ago, and I'm quite into this just as you are. My wife and I went and stayed at the Tuck U Inn in Atchison, Kansas. Right?
Oh, Atchison,
haunted Atchison. Right? Okay, across the street from the Sally House.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, is the place that you were at, was that big kind of German-looking one, real pretty?
Yeah, it used to be like the former governor's house. It's the Glick Mansion, and it's now called the Tuck U Inn. And so the Sally House, which of course I had watched sightings back in the day. I'd watched Unsolved Mysteries. I knew what the Sally House was, and I told my wife, I said, "Oh my God, we are across the street from the Sally. We're gonna go see the Sally House." And
yeah,
right. Have you been to the Sally? First, I'll ask you: have you been to the Sally House, Mark?
Yes, a couple of guys. I was outside, and it was pre-tour. And I'm looking at it. I'm like, this is Sally House, right? And they're like, yeah, sure. You want to come in and take a look? You darn tootin' I am. And it was really boring on the inside. But then he played for me the EVPs that he'd caught. And I'm like,
okay, thank you. So real quick, we went and took this. We were the only ones that showed up. And there was just a couple, like I could just tell from your characterization, we had the same people who showed us in. We paid a few bucks. We're wandering around. And the worst thing that happened to me was I got a very bad headache from the mold in the house. I mean, right away. But we went upstairs. We went into all these rooms. Well, okay. So just real quick, one of my favorite podcasts is Astonishing Legends. Don't know if you've heard it, but Scott and Forrest. It's a pretty big show the past couple of years. They do really long episodes, like 2 or 3 hour episodes. They're the exception to short episodes and still be successful. But anyway, they came to town, and I couldn't because we were moving that weekend. I was going to meet them and just introduce myself, because I'd supported them early with my Twitter and my stuff, and just been a good friend of their show when they were just starting out. So I thought, I'll meet the guys, but I couldn't go. So I said, well, if you're going to be in Atchison they were going to Atchison for the Amelia Earhart days. And I said, well, if you're in town, go to the Sally House. And they said, oh, that's on our list. And I said, okay, great. And so I waited and I heard their show. I didn't get to meet them because we were moving. So I heard their show. Well, they went and they talked about visiting the house, and Scott, one of them, he did an EVP in the nursery room, in the playroom, upstairs, right? And it was so much that and I think Scott's a decent, normal, honest guy. He was so moved by it. It scared him so badly what was played back on the EVP. He thought there were true spirits, not just talking to him, but screaming at him and being.
Oh, wow.
And he played it, and it's scary as hell. It's Astonishing Legends, folks. If you haven't heard this, go look it up, and then just look for the Sally House in the Atchison, Kansas. So I got to ask you, Mark, so you've heard some EVPs yourself from the Sally.
He shared them, and it was fascinating. He had several of them, both he and the other guy doing the tour. They were both, I don't think they were faking their belief in that this definitely happened. And it was really, that was eye-opening or ear-opening, as it were. And then there's a cultural anthropology teacher at JCCC, and feel free to look him up. He's just a super guy. We had him on Podenstein's lab, and we were supposed to do a 45-minute episode, and now we're like, okay, we gotta wrap this because you're really interesting, and I love everything you're talking about. He does paranormal investigations, but he does it from a really, really how do I put it? Both a scientific view with with high skepticism
Mm-hmm.
over, and he'll go to people's houses. He's been involved in exorcisms, and the things that we talked about were amazing. And one of the things he discussed was the Sally House, and he has film that he's shown. He's done presentations at a Prairie Fire Museum, etc. And he's a very unassuming man, very unassuming. There's no theatrics to him at all, but he'll talk straightforward to you and straight honest. And he showed some of the videos that they had taken of toys moving by themselves and sounds and this and that right there in the Sally House. So there's if the part of me that is not so skeptical definitely believes there's something going on there. What it is, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I bought Sally House. As a matter of fact, I've got it right here, the Sally House Haunting. And it's quite the book. But I've waded through quite a bit of it and gone, okay. Yeah.
Well, come on, I'll say it. I thought it was horse shit. I mean,
yeah, it was that book is just terrible.
It's terrible. But when I went there, sorry to interrupt you, but when I went there, I was disappointed that nothing. Now, I didn't do an EVP. I didn't think to record anything. I just walked around. I went in the basement. I did the whole thing. My wife's just like, oh my God, what? My wife's very game, like yours. I think she tolerates it, but to a point. And I was like, okay. And I was like, yeah, the mold's giving me a headache in here. But nothing happened. So then I hear Scott, and even his partner, his buddy his co-host, Forrest, was like, I didn't hear anything. And he listened to the EVPs, and he's like, and I think as I recall, right, he was like skeptical. He's like, I don't disbelieve you heard something and feel something from this, but it's not bothering me. And that's kind of where I am. I'm just like, I don't know. See, because you said, you kind of made a statement of belief. You said, look, I'm fairly agnostic. As am I. And so I'm thinking, okay, but I get weird feelings in certain places, gotta admit.
Yes.
There are creepy things, and there's creepy shit I've seen and heard in my life. But then you have to sit there and go, okay, wait a minute. Well, if I don't really believe there's something beyond this veil, then what is this? So wondering, sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but I'm just so curious before we wrap up here. You must know the answers, Mark. What is it? What do you think it is?
I think it's the great mystery. One of the things that I find comfort in being an agnostic, you're like, well, it could be, but you're just not convinced.
Yeah.
One of the things I take comfort in, not having a full-fledged belief system, is the idea that where was I before I was here? Yeah, I exist right now. Where was I before that?
Right.
And if I was somewhere before I arrived here, where am I going to go? Cool. There's another adventure if you really dig down deep, let's scratch beyond the surface. There's another place to be.
Right.
And there, from what I took a year and a half of graduate work in philosophy at Mizzou. Back in the late 80s.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You cut out for just a second. Did you say it was Jesuit work? I didn't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Graduate work.
Graduate work. Okay.
In philosophy at Mizzou, and back in the very late 80s, very early 90s, and because radio is the herpes of career choices. You will get out of it, and then it just breaks out again, and you have to do more radio.
Yeah.
And so I had an idea, kind of a pipe dream of being a philosophy professor, and I'm not that smart. Plus, I was really looking kind of for an answer, and I rather found it through the classes, and I'm like, okay, I don't really need to do this anymore.
Oh, wow.
But in looking at philosophy and the idea is there's people with the weight systems for WEIGHT, as in, well, you've done all this, so you're going to be beaten up for this, and this burns, and everyone else, or you can choose not to want anything, and that will give you a light enlightenment, and so you just become a rock. And that's, I like to think that I've got more waiting. And it is. I have no clue, and just like you don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow, you have no clue. Right. You have expectations, and you can make plans, but a left turn in the wrong lane can take all that away. So I kind of figure, well, with that much chance and that much the fact that I'm here, I really think there's more. I just don't know what it is.
Well, and I'm with you, and I love that.
It's the salamander. I don't know.
Well, that kind of ties it back to our thesis here on Halloween. So, does that inform your love of Halloween at all? Just the idea that there's a potentially gruesome something beyond this, or not. I don't know. To me, Halloween just represents as you said, the great mystery.
Well, it's part of the fascination with, let's be honest, fascination with death.
Yeah,
is that at least for me, is that I'm always kind of looking for that little bit of proof to say, absolutely. Okay, there really, really, really is something else. It's not just a reverse, an echo, a psychic or energy impression left on something, like your dad's fart in the couch. It's it's something, something solid to hang your hat on.
Right.
And the thing is, I'm going to shit myself if I ever find it. If I open my eyes at some point in bed and there's something hovering over me, I will scream like the smallest girl on Lassie. It will be shrieking. And once I get over it, I think I'll be okay. But, once I get that evidence, what the hell am I going to do with it?
It's so
it's part of the fun.
I'm with you. It's so my mother had told a story. She had a dream one night. She was very close to her grandmother. She had a dream, and her grandmother was in the dream beckoning her and pointing to a drawer at her desk, and just kept pointing at this drawer. And then that night, the phone rang in the middle of the night and woke her up, and it was somebody telling her that her grandmother had passed away.
Yeah.
And then by the time my mom got her wits about her and went over to her grandmother's house, somebody had apparently ransacked the drawers of the desk. Oh. So you just, I don't know if that's true. I don't remember if I'm embroidering that story, but she told me that story. But I am in love with the notion, the romanticism of people who have crossed through the veil to the other side, if there is one, and they still can't let go. That they still have to. They're still, like you said. Is it an echo? Is it a fart in the couch? Is it they just can't let go of this life, and they won't let go, and they can't move on for unfinished business, whatever that may be. It fascinates me, and I think Halloween is such a great, wonderful celebration of that great mystery. And oh my gosh, I hate to do this because I'm loving this conversation, and I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. And
absolutely,
Mark Groves, I got to have you back on the show, and I think I got to wrap this one up, but I'd like to just say, so if people want to learn more about you and Magnificent Cowlick and where to get your books, where do they need to go?
For the books, I would probably go to Amazon and just look up Magnificent Cowlick Media. Spend 10 minutes typing that stupid name for my company. And once your fingers uncramp, you'll find all the books there, and that way you can order your Cuisinart along with a few books and get the free shipping. And it comes in both paperback, you can get the hardbacks, or paperbacks, you can get an actual physical version of it, right, or the electronic version. And if it's actually, if for some unknown reason you want to find out more about me, you can go to magnificencowlickmedia.com. I also, on Facebook, I have Magnificent Cowlick Media, both the company thing, and then Magnificent Cowlick Media Books, where I have a tendency to post the occasional kind of weird, spooky stuff that I find. And I'll be honest, that has a tendency to be a little on the humorous side.
Cool.
Because there's just so many weird, funny things out there in the world and on the dark side. And of course, you can contact me through that, any of those. My phone number and all the stuff is on there. And I do have a little site on Square Up where I am willing to ship the books out, and that means at least one author, probably me, will end up signing it.
Nice.
Your easiest is probably through Amazon.
Is there a mailing list to get on, or would you say just get it with Facebook, and that's the best way to be updated when Poddenstein's Lab comes back and all that? Is
absolutely. Poddenstein's Lab, I do have a Facebook page. I've got a big graphic of closed right now because we're going through the retooling, but absolutely. Check Poddenstein's Lab is available there. And I do still have Pottenstein's Lab on, if you go to Stitcher, I do still have currently the older episodes there. I'll be taking them out at some point. It was just, that's a year and a half of work, and it's really hard to let go of. And there's so many wonderful people that we talked to. We interviewed several authors, and then like the guy from JCCC, we interviewed. There's some wonderful people there, and it's really hard to let that go right now. But as we retool, what I'll probably end up doing is taking those interview chunks and turning those into standalones.
Nice.
And letting people download those, because they were so wonderful, from talking about Burke and Hare, the murderers,
right,
cannibalism, and a guy that wrote a rather slightly humorous book that's about cannibalism in the animal world. And as a matter of fact, I'm reading and going to review a book by a gal named Caitlin Doty, who is part of a group that's all about the Order of the Good Death. And she is a mortician, but she just does these wonderful videos about different aspects of death and all the related stuff in the world about death. And the name of her new book is Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs?
Oh.
It's a kid's book, and it's got all these little facts, and it's just adorable. So all these people that we've gotten to talk to and have, given their time and let us chat about their books, that I do want to save. So that's still available. And then you can listen to our podcast from the Glore Psychiatric Museum and to do your Halloween stuff. Woo!
I like that. Hey, quick lightning round. This is just quick answers, okay, real quick before we go. Okay. Favorite Halloween movie that you watch the most every Halloween?
Every Halloween, I'm a big fan of zombies. Resident Evil, is it Extinction? I believe it was the one where she's kind of in the desert. And just, that is so awesome. The rest of them kind of suck, but that one's brilliant.
Yeah.
And just today, it's my new favorite. I saw it in the theaters and didn't like it then, but it's grown on me. Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse.
Ooh.
And if you never want to be disappointed, Tucker and Dale versus Evil is fantastic.
Fantastic. I have to agree with you on Tucker and Dale for sure. Okay. Although, I kind of almost expected you, because I think we're close to the same age, to say something like Phantasm. But
I have some guilty pleasures from the 80s, but they're not my strongest suit. I got all of the Nightmare on Elm Streets because Walmart came out with like the super cheap ones.
Oh man.
And so I bought the 4 discs, and I'm watching those going, you did not age well.
No.
Although the Dream Team one where they were all in the psychiatric ward fighting Freddy.
Yeah.
Not too bad.
Not too bad.
It's like all the, oh my God, you wanted lightning rounds. I'll shut up. Anyway. Okay. Yeah. Lightning rounds. There you go.
Okay. And then
that was hard.
No, dude, this is what I love about having you on. Besides yours or anybody just a favorite kind of novel that people have heard of out there, that's your favorite Halloween novel or short story that as far as reading goes, that you direct people to.
Well, it's cliche, but I'll say it out loud. The abridged version of The Stand by Stephen King, I thought was brilliant.
Yeah.
Now, the unabridged version, that's, more Stephen King. Oh my God. If you liked Maximum Overdrive, then you get some Maximum Overdrive moments in what was previously a brilliant book, in my humble opinion. I loved the original Stand because it was so character driven.
Yeah.
You got to know these people so well, and you cared for most of them.
Right.
And the people that you didn't like were still well-rounded and had aspects to them to where you could almost relate to them before they turned into these gooey horrors.